aircraft on the double sunrise route, one of the founding fathers of Qantas Sir Hudson Fish. It was rumored that day they were flying into a little bit of a headwind. It took them 32 hours to get all the way from Perth over to Ceylon. So I want you to try and imagine 32 hours on board this tin can throughout the Second World War at 10,000 feet in Japanese controlled airspace. It's just not an ideal flight to be signing up for anytime soon. Alright folks, 2-3 minutes, have a wander around, take some photos. I'm going to yell at you again to turn around and talk about the Connies next. Cool? Yep. Go ahead. They designed the Lockheed Constellation 39, okay? When they were designing this aircraft, they started to test for the first time ever, for the first ever pressurised cabin. Alright, so they're trying to fly at 20,000 feet in that beautiful smooth strip stream. But when they designed the shape and the body of this aircraft, they actually got the inspiration from a sea animal for the body of the aircraft. Any guesses? Not quite. Stingray? I can tell you're a pie sport, jeez. Dolphin, well done. Yeah, good. So a dolphin or a porpoise, they saw a dolphin or a porpoise swam through the water and the water kind of peeled off of them. And so, well, why can't air do that to an aircraft at 20,000 feet? So when they were designing the shape and the body of this aircraft, they designed the inspiration of the body of a dolphin, okay? And they actually perfected this aircraft in 41. But what it had originally was one massive tail. It didn't have this tri-fin tail that it has now, okay? And what they noticed with that one massive tail is that if they continue to build these aircraft, they wouldn't actually be able to fit in any of the hangars that they have around. So rather than making the hangars bigger, which to me seems like a sensible solution, I decided to spend the next 2 years redesigning that tri-fin tail, okay? So now with this tri-fin tail, the shape of a body of a dolphin really does look like a dolphin, okay? So when you're on the rear stairs of the 707 or the rear stairs of the 74, have a look back, take some photos, you get that bent nose up to the head and then down to the tail, because it really does look like a dolphin. But she gets nicknamed the most elegantly designed aircraft in the aviation industry for those two reasons. Okay. But perfected in 43, seeing capacity of 35 passengers on board, completely first class. Qantas didn't get their first one until 47. Okay. These aircraft were a big advancement for Qantas. They no longer need to team up with Imperial Airways and fly the routes halfway over to the UK, swap the mail and cargo over flying back. They can now fly these routes independently themselves. So they're operating these routes on the kangaroo route, is what it's called. Alright, it takes you 4 days and 8 stops to get all the way from Sydney over to London. Okay. On your flight, it is first class, so you have your sleeper chairs. All your food and drink was included with the purchase of your ticket. And all your stopovers and layovers, you'll be staying at your 5-star hotels and resorts. Of course, that came at a price. But $30,000 in today's money one way would get you a ticket on board this aircraft. You still got to come back, so it's a 60 grand return ticket, okay? Alright. And what Qantas started to notice operating these routes with these aircraft and make it fly. That was a Boeing 707. Qantas wanted to order 13 of them. However, they wanted them to be slightly shorter, about 3 metres to be exact. The reason being, they want to be able to guarantee they can get in and out of all the shorter runways they have around Southeast Asia and Australia. Okay? Boeing said, yeah, sure, we can make it a little bit shorter for you. However, she's going to be known as a Boeing 707-138 or a Boeing 707-138B. Just a short body 707. Alright? Qantas ordered 13 of them. The first one got delivered in 1961. It was the first ever jet engine registered aircraft outside of the US, seating capacity of 135 passengers on board. This was that number one aircraft. Okay? Until 79. It's when the last ever 200 series built. Alright. Nose to tail, 70 metres long. Wingtip to wingtip, she's 60 metres wide. Each of those engines on those wings weigh 6.5 tonnes, and they each cost $6.5 million as well. Wings on this aircraft are designed to flex 4 metres up and 4 metres down, so that's 8 metres of flex in total. However, on the modern day Dreamliners, those wings are able to flex 9 metres up and 9 metres down, so that's 18 metres. Now, when Boeing designed these aircraft, they designed them to have a life cycle of 20,000. One life cycle is one takeoff, one landing. Okay, Qantas reduced that down to 19,000 to have a bit of a safety and a bit of a buffer. But when she landed here in Longreach in 2002 on November 16th, she had completed just over 18,020 cycles. And across those 18,020 flights from 1979 until 2002, she carried just over 4.5 million passengers at her time. That's a lot of people. Now these planes, they typically need about 2.5 to 3 kilometres worth of runway to be able to land safely. Ours out there is 1,900 metres long. They also need about 100 metres width worth of runway. Ours out there is 30, so we're not ticking any of the boxes so far. Alright. She took off from Sydney with enough fuel in her to be able to have 5 attempts at landing, unsuccessful, taking to Townsville land a safety there. Pilots were coming in on the first attempt and they knew our runway was only 30 metres wide. With a wingspan of 60 metres, the 2 outboard engines, had they been switched on, engines 1 and 4 would have been on the outside of the tarmac. So they knew they had to switch it off and only use the 2 inboard engines, engines 2 and 3 to land the aircraft. Coming in, touchdown just after the white paint out there, came to a complete stop on their first attempt after 1,500 metres, which is pretty darn impressive. Okay, because when you think about it, the 707, which also landed here, came to a complete stop after 1,750. So this one here behind me, the 747, triple the size, triple the weight, was able to come to a complete stop much quicker due to its 10 more years of advanced engineering in it. Okay. Now we're going to talk about the black boxes very quickly as well. Is anyone familiar with the black boxes? They aren't black and they never will be black. They're either red, orange or yellow, and you always find them situated in the rear of the aircraft. The reason you find them in the rear of the aircraft as well, you don't often notice a plane backing into a mountain. Okay, it's typically going nose first. Alright, but also the tail. Most distinguishing feature on the aircraft. Once on the model of a crash, if you can find the tail, you can find the black boxes. If you find the black boxes, you're an average aircraft. Okay. 2 black boxes on board every aircraft. One responsible for recording the telemetry of the aircraft, so how high it is, how fast it's flying, trajectory, things like that. The other responsible for recording the conversation in the cockpit on a 30-minute loop. Okay. Ours is still intact and on board our aircraft. I'm going to point those out to you when we get at the rear stairs very shortly. Just over 900 button switches and dials inside that cockpit. Okay. 2 captains, 2 first officers, and an engineer on every flight. Captain and first officers will rotate every 5.5 hours on shift, working on their shift break. There's a couple of bunk beds up there for them to have their shift break.